As we kick off this module about writing effective proposals, Asia and I are going to be talking a little bit about, particularly compelling narratives that we've helped put together, we've reviewed, we've just helped kind of curate for the nonprofits we've worked with, and getting back to again, kind of how do you blend that data and that storytelling aspect to have a proposal that's greater than the sum of its parts and tells that complete package about the impact you're trying to make. So Asia, maybe without naming too many names, what have you seen in terms of like an effective proposal and something that was particularly compelling for a funder?
Absolutely. What I've seen that's been super beneficial is nonprofits have a very good, strong hand on their why they do the work that they do, versus, again, just being reactionary to what the demands may be. Nonprofits have been able to successfully, nonprofits that I've worked with have been able to successfully identify what effective truly means for them, as opposed to that larger definition of what effective is for that particular grant. And so, best practices there is truly being able to, one, identify exactly what is the story that you want to tell that not only represents the people that you are servicing, but also the community at large in terms of the personality of the area, so that you are being able to effectively showcase to funders what does the rhythm and what does the timeline look like for a community as it's getting goods and services on a recurring basis. And in that, the balance of the data becomes important as well, because I've seen in a variety of proposals that I've won, some of them, depending on the type of funder, have been able to get the funding dollars not because of the data, but more so because of the lack that's in that community, because that funder had a mission of being able to infuse resources there. So they were just really focused on the need. And so that's why I say I've really seen and worked and crafted narratives with folks in terms of like, what kind of nonprofit are you, not for the right now, but for the long haul, so that it better helps that process of pairing you with the appropriate funder for an effective proposal.
That's a great point, knowing where you're going. And I think it kind of ties on some of the logic model components with like the outputs versus outcomes in terms of like the
Yes.
overall goal that you're trying to get to and like giving a little bit of that roadmap on what it looks like. For me, I think some of my favorite proposals, ones that I felt have been particularly successful or just, more fun to write is when you incorporate many different voices in that application. So, we've talked a lot about soliciting, client testimonials, but I also want to switch gears and talk about some of the collaborative proposals. When you're working with organizations that might be closely aligned with you or maybe completely out of left field, so maybe like an arts organization, maybe, and how do you kind of build those programs together in a way, in a creative way that you haven't seen before? And I think it's a really great way to kind of show the holistic impact from what your nonprofit is trying to accomplish in your community and show the funder that you're willing to play nicely in the sandbox. Like, we all work in one community ecosystem and there are multiple ways to crack that nut, and there are things you can learn from using that arts organization example in terms of storytelling, in terms of creatively engaging maybe some of the clients from your program, empowering some of those voices. I've been a part of projects where there were like some story slams that were able to really honor some of the issues, some of the stories that folks that would come to the nonprofit I was working for, and elevate that to the community, so that there's a way to really give a new platform and kind of shake up the programming a little bit and give you some new ideas for expansions in the future.
Absolutely, and that excites me to share. Even as much as we're talking in this moment about writing the proposal, crafting the effective one, I think it's worthwhile for me to bring up that me being on the other side of that table too, with funders that are looking at these effective proposals or what they deem to be effective. I want to share this to some of our learners here that are absorbing this information for writing effective grant proposals. There you have advocates that are reading your proposals, right? So if those folks see some gaps in your application, you want to make sure, again, knowing your brand of your nonprofit and also showcasing your capacity as the nonprofit staff that you're going to deliver. Because I've been on other sides of the table where I was on the grant review panel, right? And the funders was ready to cut it, but the organization's mission and their success that they showcased in the grant application, I fought for them, because at the end of the day, the evidence was there that the work was that it was working for that particular community, but it wasn't being translated to the funder who was actually going to sign the check appropriately. And so don't forget that when people are reviewing your proposals, you may have advocates as well. So the evidence is what's going to be super important in terms of what's working in the event that there is a lack or a disconnect.
Absolutely. Yeah, you always want to make sure, we talked about in this submodule, not being overconfident, not, selling a pie in the sky or snake oil, being realistic and, just showing your math and showing your homework so that, funders can feel confident that you're not selling them a bag of beans, that what the opportunity is for your community. And like Asia was saying, what is the opportunity in the future as these programs progress, as you're continuing to impact your clients' lives, and what either advanced programming or maybe new programs you can bring to the fold to evolve to those needs.
Absolutely. So in this moment of reflection, be sure to that you're not only recalling some of the personal encounters that you may have had as it relates to crafting grant narratives, or even in your experience of working with others in your network of hearing their stories, but make sure you're also talking to the rest of your nonprofit, or you're talking to even some of your clients, not in terms of grant writing, right, but in terms of what works. Because again, it's about crafting an effective grant writing proposal, excuse me, to be able to showcase a narrative that is reflective of the community, but also reflective that you are going to use the funding dollars responsibly. And then lastly, take this time to ensure that you're reflecting on how well you may have blended that data with stories, right? Anthony and I have talked about this very strongly throughout in terms of that healthy balance that you have between the data and the numbers, but also the social impact that happens as well, meaning how does the numbers translate to, are we solving the problem? Because at the end of the day, that is what you're doing as a nonprofit, is you're being a solution to a problem by way of writing a grant proposal, an effective grant proposal at that too, right? To be able to continue to serve the problem, but also solve it entirely. And you need some really great funding to do so. So continue to reflect, continue to resource share with the others in your cohort as well. And we look forward to talking to you a little bit more about your journey and your process of securing that grant.